Imagine the sting of betrayal, not from an enemy, but from a face that smiled while cutting you the deepest. A voice that called you friend, even as it sharpened the blade behind your back. A heart you trusted, only to discover it beat with deception. This is a pain unlike any other. The pain of being wounded not in battle, but in brotherhood. Not in war, but in love. They stood beside you with eyes full of light, but their hearts carried shadows. This is not the kind of pain that fades overnight. It lingers, not just in memory, but in trust. You begin to doubt your own discernment. How could I not see it? Becomes a tormenting refrain. You replay every conversation, every smile, every moment of laughter, only to realize it was all a mask, a charade carefully crafted to keep you close while planning your fall. And perhaps the most painful part? You still loved them. You defended them. You gave them the benefit of the doubt when everyone else saw the truth. You stood between them and judgment, thinking you were shielding a friend, when in fact you were protecting a serpent coiled in charm. But let me tell you something, God was watching. While they wore their masks, He was examining their hearts. While you were caught in the illusion, He was preparing revelation. God does not let masks stay on forever, not when they are hurting His children. He allows the act to play out, just long enough for the truth to mature, and then, like thunder rolling across a quiet sky, He exposes everything. You see, God isn't just the healer of wounds, He is the revealer of hidden agendas. He will not let His chosen ones be surrounded by counterfeit loyalty. He allows the separation not to break you, but to bless you. Because some of the people you're crying over right now were sent not for your growth, but for your downfall. And so He intervenes. First, He removes your need to be loved by them. Then He removes the illusion of their goodness. Finally, He removes them entirely. It may feel like loss, but it's protection in disguise. It may feel like heartbreak, but it's heaven's redirection. Do not mourn those who smiled while hurting you. Mourn the time you wasted trying to keep their mask in place. Because when God exposes, He does not just reveal who they were, He reveals who you are without them. Stronger, clearer, wiser. So if you're in that place right now, where the mask has fallen, where the truth is louder than the lie, take heart. You are not being destroyed, you are being delivered. You are not losing friends, you are losing fakes. And God is orchestrating every tear, every unveiling, and every revelation with divine precision. This is not revenge, this is restoration. This is not bitterness, this is clarity. You do not need to get even. You need only to step back. Because when God removes a mask, He does it in front of everyone. He makes the truth undeniable. He makes the hidden things visible, and He makes sure you never doubt yourself like that again. So lift your head. The heartbreak is not the end. It's the beginning of your discernment. The mask they wore was never yours to manage. And now that it's gone, you are free. Free to love without fear, free to trust without suspicion, free to walk forward without dead weight. God is not just revealing the face behind the smile, He is also revealing the strength behind your silence. Let Him finish what He started. Now, let's unfold the truths you must carry forward. God allows deception for a time, so the truth will carry undeniable weight when it is revealed. It is one of the strangest truths in our walk with God, that sometimes He allows deception to sit beside us, dine with us, laugh with us, even lay its head upon our shoulder. We wonder why the truth delays. We wonder why the mask remains in place while we continue giving, loving, forgiving. The hurt grows sharper with each passing day of trust given to the wrong person. But this delay is not divine negligence, it is divine strategy. God, in His all-knowing wisdom, allows deception to unfold so that when the time for truth arrives, there is no doubt left in your soul. The mask must fall, not when you are halfway convinced, but when you are utterly certain. God doesn't just want you to know the truth, He wants you to feel the truth, to see it so clearly that you never question your spiritual vision again. He is not trying to simply end your suffering, He is preparing your discernment. This is why the lie is allowed to breathe for a moment. This is why the smiling betrayer is allowed to speak, to act, to blend into the light. If God were to expose them immediately, your heart wouldn't learn, your spirit wouldn't grow, your eyes wouldn't sharpen, and your boundaries would remain unfortified. Sometimes pain is the only tutor strong enough to teach the lesson that words cannot. And when the exposure finally comes, when their actions no longer align with their words, when the contradictions pile too high to ignore, it is God pulling back the curtain with mercy. He waited just long enough for you to be ready to see, not merely to hear whispers of wrong, not to suspect or assume, but to witness it with spiritual clarity. No more guessing, no more confusion, just the undeniable light of truth, falling on everything hidden. You begin to look back, and suddenly it all makes sense. The inconsistencies, the subtle comments, the coldness behind the kindness. You realize you were not blind. You were being protected from seeing too early, before you had the strength to handle the weight of truth. God reveals not on your timeline, but on the timeline that will empower your healing. What's even more profound is that the exposure is rarely loud. God has a way of dismantling deception in silence. He does not need to cause a scandal to make a point. He simply lets the mask fall by itself. Over time, by their own actions, by the natural unraveling of their pretense, and when it does, there is no need for revenge. The truth, now visible, speaks louder than any retaliation ever could. So yes, you were deceived, but you were not destroyed. You were delayed, not denied. And now, the truth rests in your hands like a lantern, lighting the path forward with painful clarity and divine assurance. You have seen behind the mask, and that is the beginning of wisdom. The people who hurt you with a smile were never sent to stay. They were sent to teach. Some people enter your life with warmth that feels like spring. Their words bloom with kindness. Their smiles soften your guard, and their presence feels like safety. You let them in. You share your thoughts, your hopes, even your brokenness, and then, like a silent shift in the wind, you notice something subtle. The warmth grows cold. Their smile no longer comforts, it hides. Their words, once sweet, now wound, and the pain begins, not from enemies, but from the very ones who once felt like sanctuary. You ask yourself how someone who seemed so genuine could become so cruel. You question your intuition, your choices, even your worth. But the truth is not that you made a mistake. The truth is that they were never meant to stay. They were sent into your life not as partners in your purpose, but as instruments in your preparation. It is a hard lesson that some of the most painful people were also the most necessary. Not because they were right, but because they revealed what was wrong. They came wearing smiles, because that is what would lower your walls. They came speaking comfort, because that is what would invite your trust. But behind it all was a divine assignment, not from them, but from heaven, an assignment to stretch your discernment, to reveal the cracks in your foundation, to awaken a level of awareness that can only be taught by betrayal. If they had come into your life with obvious malice, you would have rejected them instantly. But that wouldn't have taught you anything. It's the ones who come as angels but act like thieves who shape your spiritual muscles. They teach you how to see with your spirit, not just your eyes. They teach you the difference between charm and character, between closeness and connection, between attention and affection. Between attention and affection. These people didn't stay because they couldn't. Their mask had an expiration date, and their purpose had a limit. God allowed them in for a season, not for your destruction, but for your development. And when their time ended, He removed them, just as He planned. So now, instead of mourning their exit, you learn to bless the lesson. You stop asking why they left and start asking what they revealed. You let the sting turn into strength. You no longer grieve their departure. You honor their role, because they taught you what no sermon could. They taught you what fake love looks like, and by doing that, they prepared you for the real thing. God removes masks to rescue your purpose from the hands of manipulators. Your purpose is not casual, it is sacred, and because it is sacred, it draws both destiny and danger toward it. Every calling carries a weight that cannot be entrusted to just anyone, but manipulators, those who smile and flatter, often know how to disguise themselves well enough to get close. They don't come with fangs, they come with favors. They don't confront, they charm. They're not after your heart, they're after your direction. They see your light and seek to dim it, not with violence, but with quiet control. They say what you want to hear, they become who you need them to be. They study your vulnerabilities, not to heal them, but to use them. And for a while it works. You feel supported, you feel seen, you believe they are for you because they act like they are. But underneath the performance, they are slowly steering you away from your purpose, away from who you are, away from the very path God laid before you. They twist your convictions, they confuse your thoughts, they make you second-guess your vision, your worth, your instincts. You start to adjust to keep their peace. You start to shrink to keep them comfortable, and without realizing it, your purpose begins to suffocate under the weight of their manipulation. But God sees what you can't, and He doesn't just see your pain. He sees what it's costing your calling. He sees how much energy you spend defending their behavior, excusing their inconsistencies, covering their messes. And He intervenes, not because you asked, but because your destiny demands it. He tears the veil they wear. He disrupts the performance. He exposes the agenda behind the affection. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as subtle as a shift in your spirit, a discomfort where there was once peace, a tension where there was once laughter, a slow awakening that something's not right. God speaks not just through storms, but through stillness. And when He starts to remove someone's mask, He does it in such a way that you don't just see their face, you see their impact on your future. Suddenly you see how your creativity was dimming, how your voice was softening, how your focus was wandering. You realize that you were being molded into someone else's version of you. And that realization is your escape. That moment is your deliverance. Because once the mask falls, so does their grip. Once the illusion breaks, your identity begins to return. Your mind clears, your voice rises, your purpose resurfaces. God does not allow the fake to stay where the sacred must grow. He does not let manipulators plant seeds in soil that He's reserved for greatness. He removes them, not just to protect you from pain, but to protect you from delay. because every moment spent under the influence of the wrong voice is a moment lost in the wilderness of confusion. So he rescues you not just from people, but from spiritual paralysis. And he does it by revealing what was hidden in plain sight. He does not expose to shame you, he exposes to liberate you. When the truth about someone finally comes to light, when their words contradict their behavior, when their smile fades and their intent becomes undeniable, your first reaction might be embarrassment. You may feel humiliated that you trusted them, that you loved them, that you stood beside them, even when the signs were there. The enemy whispers, "Look how foolish you were." He wants to chain you to that feeling of shame. But that's not God's voice. God does not reveal to mock you. He reveals to free you. He doesn't pull the curtain to condemn your heart. He pulls it to cleanse your life. Because what you called loyalty was actually bondage. What you thought was connection was actually corruption. And while you were busy holding on, God was planning your release. There is something deeply holy about the moment God allows the truth to rise. It is not vindictive, it is redemptive. He doesn't expose to leave you standing in ashes. He exposes so you'll stop building a future on false ground. It's not punishment, it's protection. Think of how much further you would have gone, investing your time, your love, your trust into something that was never real. Think of the days ahead that would have been stolen, the dreams that would have been delayed, the peace that would have been poisoned. Exposure may feel like destruction, but in truth, it is a divine rescue, and God knows when to do it. He doesn't pull the mask off too early because your heart may still defend it. He waits until you're strong enough to see, until the cracks are too wide to ignore, until your spirit begins to sense the discomfort. When he reveals, it's always timed for your deliverance. It's never to disgrace you in front of others. It's to remove the invisible chain around your heart. You may feel the weight of betrayal, but what's really lifting is the weight of captivity. For too long, you carried the burden of sustaining something false, of explaining away red flags, of justifying disrespect. But once the truth arrives, God gives you permission to lay it all down. You are not defined by what you tolerated. You are redeemed by what you walked away from. Exposure is God's way of saying, you've had enough. It's time to be free. And though it may come with tears, with confusion, even with loneliness, it also comes with clarity, courage, and light. You don't have to wear shame for what was hidden. You have to wear honor for how you endured, how you stayed kind, and how you're now stepping out into truth. Spiritual discernment grows stronger when emotional attachments are broken by truth. There are few things as blinding as emotional attachment. The heart, once invested, creates its own narrative. It stitches together excuses, justifications, and memories into a tapestry that often blocks out red flags. Love, once given, wants to protect. Trust, once built, wants to preserve. And so we close our eyes to what doesn't fit, convincing ourselves that loyalty demands blindness. But this is not loyalty. This is a slow erosion of discernment, masked by the illusion of love. You saw the signs, you felt the shift. You noticed the silences, the passive jabs, the growing distance behind the familiar smile. But instead of confronting it, you softened your gaze. You gave more. You prayed harder. You forgave quicker. Because your heart was tied to the image, not the reality. Your spirit whispered truth, but your emotions pressed mute. And that's when discernment begins to dull, not because it's broken, but because it's buried beneath the weight of your hope. But God, in His mercy, never allows discernment to die. He lets it rest for a while, but not forever. And when the time is right, he begins the painful process of breaking the emotional bond that was formed in illusion. He doesn't do it through anger or bitterness. He does it through truth. Cold, clear, undeniable truth. The kind that doesn't shout, it simply is. The kind that dismantles the fantasy you tried to maintain. When the truth breaks the bond, it feels like betrayal all over again. You mourn not just the person, but the story you told yourself about them. You grieve the hope, you ache for the dream. But as the emotional fog clears, something sacred begins to stir. Discernment. Your spirit awakens with new vision. You begin to hear your own voice again. The intuition you once silenced now speaks louder. The clarity you once feared becomes your strength. This is how God sharpens you, not through comfort, but through clarity. He lets the mask fall, not just to show you their face, but to show you yours. To remind you of the strength you forgot you had, to call forth the wisdom you nearly abandoned. Emotional attachment, when formed in deception, is a prison, and truth is the key that breaks its lock. You start to see patterns not just in them, but in yourself. You see how often you gave without boundaries, how often you hoped without evidence, how often you stayed not because they earned it, but because you couldn't bear the pain of leaving. And in that moment of revelation, discernment becomes not just a gift, it becomes a guard, a shield for your spirit, a filter for your future. And the beauty of it all? Once discernment is reborn, it rarely dulls again. Because once your eyes have seen the truth behind a smile, they never settle for surface again. You begin to listen more deeply. You no longer cling to words. You watch for consistency. You no longer fall for charisma. You look for character. Your spirit becomes sensitive. Your soul becomes wise, and your heart becomes guarded, not in fear, but in reverence for your own peace. God will use what was meant to destroy you to sharpen your vision and isolate your real allies. There is a strange alchemy in the way God works, how he takes what was meant to break you and uses it to build you. The very knife that wounded you becomes the tool that sculpts you. The betrayal that threatened to drown you becomes the wave that pushes you to shore. And the people who were sent with smiles to derail your destiny become the loudest proof that divine protection was always at work behind the scenes. When someone hurts you while smiling in your face, the damage is layered. It's not just physical or verbal, it's spiritual. It creates confusion. It shakes your sense of judgment. It clouds your ability to trust. But that very confusion becomes the training ground for wisdom. That shaking becomes the foundation for strength. Because God never allows harm without preparing a harvest. What was meant to destroy you becomes the lens through which you finally see. You begin to look around and realize not everyone clapping for you is cheering for you. Not everyone close to you is committed to you. And God starts isolating your real allies, not by announcement, but by revelation. He lets time do the work. He allows behavior to expose character. He lets the fruit speak louder than the words. And slowly, those who were pretending lose the energy to maintain the act. God doesn't need your enemies to fall in public. Sometimes he just needs them to fall out of your life. He lets them show their hand through their own decisions, and as they drift away, as their energy shifts, as their intentions become obvious, you are left with clarity. You are left with a circle smaller but stronger. Fewer people but deeper trust. Less noise, more peace. And it's not just about removing the wrong ones, it's about showing you the right ones, the quiet supporters, the ones who never sought attention, the ones who stayed consistent in seasons where others changed. God isolates your allies not by popularity, but by purity. He reveals who can hold your heart without harming it, who can walk with your vision without stealing your voice, and who can stand beside you without secretly wishing to stand above you. The pain then was not punishment, it was pruning. It was heaven cutting away the false to make room for the true. It was God saying, "This one cannot go where you're going." And though it stings in the moment, it saves you years of damage, years of confusion, years of betrayal that would have only grown worse if left unchecked. So now, every hurt becomes a tool, every lie becomes a lens, every mask removed becomes a mirror showing you who belongs and who never did. And in this clarity, in this divine sharpening, your steps become firmer, your relationships become fewer but fuller, and your heart, once torn, becomes whole, not because it was never broken, but because it was broken with purpose. Every mask removed is a mercy, because God will never let fake loyalty destroy a true calling. At first glance, it may feel like betrayal, it may feel like rejection, it may feel like loss so deep it echoes in your chest. When someone's mask falls, especially someone you believed in, it is not only their image that collapses, it's the story you built around them, the future you imagined, the connection you defended. It feels like something sacred was violated, and it was, but not in vain, because every time a mask falls, it is an act of mercy. We tend to associate mercy with gentleness, but sometimes mercy comes with fire. Sometimes it burns away the illusions you refuse to release. Sometimes it pulls people out of your life in ways that feel brutal, abrupt, and confusing. But that is because God is not just protecting your heart, He's protecting your calling. And your calling is too valuable to be carried into the next season by people wearing faces they didn't earn. God does not tolerate counterfeits in covenant places. He does not bless a future built on false alignment. He will never allow fake loyalty to sabotage true purpose. So the mask must fall, not just to show you the truth, but to prevent your destruction. Because a person who pretends to love you can do more damage than one who openly opposes you. At least with enemies you know where the arrows come from, but it's the friend with a hidden dagger that draws the deepest wound. So God intervenes. He steps into the charade with divine authority and says, "No more." And suddenly, the smile no longer hides the darkness. The charm no longer blinds the conscience. The illusion fades. And what's left is clarity, not always joyful, but always merciful, because now you are free to walk forward without weight. You are no longer dragging someone behind you who was silently praying for your downfall. You are no longer investing in what was draining you. You are no longer worshipping a connection that God never authored. This is not cruelty, it is kindness. For too long you begged God to elevate you, to bless your work, to increase your territory. But elevation demands separation. You cannot take everyone with you, especially not those who were never with you to begin with. So the exposure was not an attack, it was an answer. God was answering the prayers you didn't know you were praying. He was preserving the parts of you that had nearly been poisoned by disguised disloyalty. And what's even more beautiful? God doesn't just remove the mask and walk away. He stands with you in the aftermath. He comforts you in the tears. He strengthens you in the confusion. And slowly, He rebuilds. Not just your trust in others, but your trust in yourself. Your trust in your discernment. Your trust in Him. You realize that not everyone lost is a loss. Some were lessons. Some were warnings. Some were barriers to blessings you couldn't see because their shadow loomed too large over your light. But now, with the mask gone and the path clear, your spirit can breathe again. Your purpose can stretch. Your vision can return to its divine focus. What once felt like devastation now looks like deliverance. So lift your head, not in arrogance, but in quiet strength. Let the tears fall if they must, but know this: they are watering the soil of your next season. You have not been forsaken. You have been refined. You are not broken. You are being built. God saw the mask long before you did, and He chose to reveal it when your soul was finally ready to walk away with wisdom. The hurt you feel now is temporary, but the clarity you've gained will guide you for the rest of your life. Every mask that has fallen, every false connection that has been severed, has only served to make room for what is real, for what is true, for what is divinely sent. And as you move forward, don't look back in bitterness. Look back with gratitude. Thank God for the exposure. Praise Him for the protection. Trust Him with the next chapter, because the author of your life never leaves a sentence unfinished. The masks have fallen. The truth has spoken, and now your purpose is finally free to rise. God bless you.